Hi, hello everyone. As Inga said, I'm Marcin Dudziak from Veeam. I'm inside system engineer, and today we will be talking about ransomware attacks, how to protect and what you can expect during such attack, and what to do during that attack and what to not to do. So we don't have much time, so let's start. But before we will go to our topic, a little bit of statistics. Veeam is preparing each year a data protection report, and as you can see, in this year's report, we ask questions also about the ransomware. And by the way, you can find this report online. And we ask companies and institutions. We interviewed more than 3,000 of them. If they were attacked, if they are aware that there was some ransomware attack attempt on their infrastructure. It could be a different kind of attack. It could be attack on one workstation, or it could be attack on their data center. But as you can see, more than 75% of companies are aware of at least one attempt of ransomware attack in the past 12 months. So as you can see, only 24% of them are not aware of any attempt. So that doesn't mean that there were none, but they are not aware that anyone tried to attack them in that way. So the threat is real, the threat is there, so there is more question when than if. So I think it's a good idea to be prepared for ransomware attack, to think before such attack in your infrastructure, what to do, what not to do, how to prepare. And I think this is the topic of our presentations. Okay, so how to prepare before the attack? First thing, cyber insurance. At Veeam, we don't sell that, so you can buy it that from us. But yeah, maybe it's a good idea to buy one. And why? Apart from obvious one, the insurance, there is another one. There's another thing, because okay, this is the obvious one, but there is another one. If there was an attack in your infrastructure, I will be talking about that in the next slides. You need to, before you can take any actions, really, to restore your virtual machines, to restore your services, it's important to understand what really happened in your infrastructure, to analyze the situation. And in most cases, it's really hard to do. You need to have some very specific knowledge and to do that. And there are not a lot of specialists on the market, so there are not cheap ones. And also, they are quite busy. So in the situation when you have an attack, you are under an attack, ransomware attack, there could be some problems in accessibility to such persons. And if you have cyber insurance, in some cases, I could say in most cases, probably, the insurance companies already have employed such specialists. So it will be much easier to get access to such person in the when you will be under attack. So it's a good thing to think about that, and maybe it's a good idea to buy such cyber insurance. Backup communication channel. When you are under attack, one of the first things you will do is to start to create a support ticket. Support ticket to backup vendor, but basically to all your main vendors, hardware and software vendors. And please just remember to give a way to contact you, for example, cell phone, not only email, but cell phone, because in Veeam, we have a special team, the dedicated team, to take care only of tickets with ransomware attacks. So first, just be clear that it's ransomware attack. So your ticket will be redirected to this team. And second thing, just please remember to give a cell phone number, because the guys from the support will try to reach you as fast as possible, and the email is not the fastest way. And the guys from our support are often complaining that administrators forget to give the cell phone number in that ticket. And yeah, it's understandable that admins are in a hurry, they are nervous and so on. So it's good to be prepared for that, and remember to give cell phone number also when you're creating a support ticket. Another thing is failback emails. Okay, so you didn't create any Veeam support ticket before. You are under attack and you need to create one. So you need to log to our account, to your account on our portal, and you never done that. So you, of course, you don't remember the password, and you want to restore the password. But yeah, we will send you information on your email, and your mail server were encrypted, and you don't have access to it. So you can't restore the password, you can't create a login to our portal, you can create the ticket. So it's good idea to have second email address, at least one email address outside of your domain, outside of your infrastructure, to every main vendor, hardware and software vendor that you have. And lately in Veeam, we introduced this option. You can, of course, you need your email address with your company's domain to create account, but then you can add another one that is outside of your domain. For example, Gmail, Hotmail, whatever, but it's outside of your infrastructure, and you can use it to, for example, restore your password, create ticket, and so on. So I think it's a good idea to be prepared also for that. Restore location. It's also another thing that I don't think every admin thinks every day about that. And what will happen if you are after attack? You have your backups, and in theory, you can restore the backups, but you don't have hardware to restore to, because, for example, there will be some investigation, and your hardware was confiscated for the as a evidence. For example, not a long time, for example, a week or two. For investigation, maybe it's not a long time. For your infrastructure and services, it's forever. So maybe it's a good idea to have some idea what to do in such situation. Of course, there could be different ideas. For example, old hardware. But if you want to use old hardware, be prepared to test it on a regular basis, because you don't want to test it when the attack arrives and you didn't turn on this hardware, for example, 1 year or even longer time. So you need to, in that case, you need to test it on a regular basis. It could be, for example, not old hardware, but maybe you have some test environment or environment for developers. Maybe you can use that environment, but again, it's a good idea to test that. Maybe you need to add some special steps to restore those your virtual machines in such environment, network steps or other. So it's a good idea to test that before, to learn how to do it before the accident. And there could be other solutions. For example, maybe it's a good idea to consider infrastructure as a service. But to do that, you have to have some tools to restore or migrate your loads, your virtual machines inside the cloud, inside to the public vendors. So in Veeam, we have options to restore your backups directly to the cloud, to the AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Platform. You can backup VMware or Hyper-V virtual machine and restore it directly to these vendors. So yeah, it's maybe it's a good idea, but if you want to use that, again, you need to test that before. You need to at least have basic knowledge about those platforms to know what to do inside of them to configure your infrastructure. You need to test the whole process, and you need also think about the bandwidth, because if you want to restore only one virtual machine, maybe it won't take so long. But if you are after attack and you need to restore few of them, so maybe some of them are quite big, yeah, maybe it's a better idea to already have copies of your backups inside this, for example, Azure or AWS. We have also such options to send this copy of your backups to those vendors, and in such case you will be able to restore directly from this vendor object storage to their cloud platform. So yeah, if you want to consider infrastructure ROS, it's a good idea, but again, you need to be prepared for it. You need to learn how to do it. So yeah, test the entire process and learn. Okay, the attack is on the way. What you can do? In most cases, it's not a golden rule. So there are some cases that it's not a good idea, but generally it's a good idea to take everything offline to minimize damage, because yeah, you don't know what is really happening, and maybe someone is, apart from encrypting your data, maybe someone is stealing your data. So once again, I'm completely aware that it's not possible in every situation, and yeah, there are some infrastructures that you just can't take them off because you are thinking there is something is encrypting and so on. But it's a good idea again to think about that before. What conditions should be met to take everything offline? On what step of the attack? So if you discover that some of your virtual machines are encrypted, is it enough or not? So it depends from the infrastructure to infrastructure, from the services and so on. So it's a good idea to be prepared for that, to think what to do before the attack, not to thinking about that during the attack. Open support ticket, we talked about that. Again, mention how you can be reached. It's very important. Don't touch backups, because yeah, it's very tempting. My virtual machines are encrypted, but I have backups. Backup solution is working, so I will restore them. Yeah, it's not a good idea to do that before you are aware what's really happening in your infrastructure, because if there is some person behind the attack, it's not just stupid software, but there is a person behind it. It's most cases it doesn't look like someone gets access to your infrastructure and okay, I have access to one or few virtual machines and I will encrypt them. It takes time. Such person have access to your infrastructure. Now they try to get access to your most important services like Active Directory or backup services, backup software. And after that, they try to delete backups and then encrypt your data. But in the meantime, very often they are making a lot of backdoors on many of your virtual machines. So if you restore such virtual machine with backdoors, in no time you will be again in trouble. So before you will restore anything, you need to understand what really happened in your infrastructure, what malicious software could be installed on your virtual machines, and it will take time. So yeah, I know it's very tempting, but maybe it's not a best idea to restore it immediately. Yeah, we talk about that. Exactly. Connections, yeah. So I was talking about that in a minute just before. So another point, realistic recovery expectations for management. It's really tricky one. It's really hard one because it's very hard to say how long it will take to restore your infrastructure, to restore your services, because before you can think about that, you need to understand what really happened. Again, you need to understand what happens in your infrastructure, because only when you know what happened, you will know what needs to be done to fix that, and then you will be able to assume how much time you will need to do that. But again, it's very important from the beginning to have realistic expectations and to present them to management. that maybe they are expected that you will restore everything in 2 hours, but the realistic expectation is maybe in a week or something. It happens. So yeah, it really helps if you are able to realistically set the realistic expectations. When you start to restore virtual machines to quarantine environment. So again, it could be different environments. Maybe you have separate hardware, or maybe you can use again this test or development environment to separate it and try to restore to this environment and test if everything is working, if virtual machines are clean. But there are other solutions. For example, in Veeam, you can use functionality this called virtual lab and create such secured quarantine environment and restore virtual machines to that environment. It is isolated, so you can check the virtual machines before. You can check if there are any backdoors, if the machines are clean, and if they are clean, you can migrate them to the production. Again, different ideas, but it's good to think about that before what we will do, and if you have the tools to do that. Yeah. Recovery speed. Again, most admins didn't test their backup infrastructure with restoring most of their production infrastructure. So most admins are restored files, one virtual machine, few virtual machines, but not half of them or more than half. So did you test that? Did you know? Do you know how much time you will need to restore most of your environment? Yeah, maybe it will be quite a long time, and maybe you need to fix your backup infrastructure to adjust. Maybe it's a good idea to have two backup repositories. First, small but fast one, and keep the most recent restore points there. And the second one, to have a bigger one, for example, Dedupe appliance that is able to store a lot of restore points, but it's not so fast. But yeah, you will keep their longer time retention. And by the way, if you are using Dedupe appliance and want to restore from such appliance, try to use full VM restore options, because in that restore options, there will be sequential reads and they are much faster than random reads. If you try to restore virtual machine, but for example, like instant recovery in Veeam, by starting the virtual machines directly from backups, we will use this random access. And maybe for one virtual machines too, it won't be terrible. But if you try to do to start like that a lot of virtual machines, yeah, it could kill. I mean, kill by performance on performance such device. So if you want to restore and virtual machines from Dedupe appliances, in most cases the best option is to restore one by one virtual machines. Then you will use sequential reads, and they are much faster on such devices. Okay, now we have an example of how the attack could look. Of course, there are different attacks and different approaches. We chose the most common steps on those attacks, and I want to present them. Of course, I'm not a security specialist in most of these tools. I will just tell you some things on general level, and yeah, you will see where backup fits in that slide. Okay, so first there will be something that gets to your infrastructure. In most cases, it's mail. It could be pen drive or other devices or other methods, but yeah, most popular thing is just some email with attachment, with link, with something. So it's a good idea to have inbound, for example, inbound email inspection tools to scan the emails, to scan the attachment, to scan the links. And if the attack is not so sophisticated, you should be able to filter the infected emails. Then, in most cases, there will be needs of user action to start to develop the thread. So user needs to put the pen drive to his workstation or click the link. So yeah, there are some tools like DNS logs, web proxy, endpoint security, of course. But I think the best tool is to educate your users. I know it's hard to do. I know from myself, from my experience, but there are ways. For example, for me, it was quite experience when I was waiting for delivery. It was from outside my country, so I didn't know which company will be used. And I was busy between the meetings, and I get emails with status, as it was told that I can check status of my delivery, and I didn't know if I will be at home. So I just clicked the link, and of course it wasn't the real threat; it was just a test. But yeah, I learned a lot, and I'm much more cautious from that time. So there are ways to learn, to teach them the users, and if admins will be able to educate the users, it's a really good protection for your infrastructure. Then the attackers will try to compromise the user account, and multi-factor authentication is a quite nice tool to protect, but it's not ideal, of course, none is, and there are ways to pass around it, but yeah, I think it's a quite effective tool to help protect your infrastructure. In most cases, this user won't be admin user or privileged user with access to your most precious services. So the attackers will need to escalate the privileges of that user. And yeah, there are some tools like LAPS, monitor privilege. You can monitor your privileged accounts and groups. So there are some tools, some to protect from such action, and other to monitor and to realize fast that, for example, such user has admin privileges and he shouldn't have that. So yeah, you know that something is happening in your infrastructure. Next step, if again there is threat in your infrastructure, there is some account was compromised. There is the question how broad the infections could get in your infrastructure. Maybe it's a good idea to have segmentation of your network and properly design and implemented segmentation, and also role-based access. Again, properly designed and implemented, because yeah, if you just have those and they are not properly designed or implemented, there could be leaks everywhere. So yeah, these tools can be useful, but again, need to be properly designed and implemented. And the last but not least, the backups. And the backups, as you can see, are the last line of defense, because you can take care of every previous step, install every tool, and yeah, you will be safer, your infrastructure will be safer, but there are always chances that someone will get access somehow to your infrastructure. And it's very important to have backups, and not only to have backups, but to have working backups. It's very important to validate if your backups are working and you are able to restore from them. Okay, so let's talk about the backups. And if you ever saw any Veeam presentation, there are very big chances that you already saw some variation of this slide. Our 3-to-1 rule, it's not our rule, we are just promoting it. And the 3 stands for you should have at least 3 copies, different copies of your production data on 2 different media. So you have to have 2 different media, 1 copy, for example, on blog devices, and second one on tape devices. It could be also the object storage. In this context, it is considered as a second media. One copy should be off-site, so outside of your data center, of your primary data center. Next one we added recently is one copy should be offline, air-gapped, or immutable. So we are trying to protect from situation when hackers get access to your backup solution. And if they get access to your backup solution, they will try to corrupt, encrypt, or delete your backups, and then they will start to encrypt your production data. So it is important to have at least one copy of your backups that is offline, that no one is able to delete it. Or if you can't have offline backups, at least immutable backups. That is a lot harder to delete them, even if they are online. And the zero means zero errors. So you need to have zero errors. To be sure that there are zero errors, you need to test your backup on regular basis, because there is no other way. So you need to test your backups to be sure that you are able to restore from them. So how we can achieve some of those 3-to-1 requirements, let's say. Scale out backup repository. We don't have time to go deep in such this functionality, but in short, you can create this scale out backup repository. Inside of the scale out repository, you can have two tiers. The first tier is the, let's say, the so-called performance tier, and basically it's local storage, block storage, dedupe appliance, NAS storage, so your local devices that you have in your own infrastructure. The capacity tier is the second tier in that backup repository. It's object storage tier. So you can send, basically, you can send a copy of your backups to object storage repository, for example, to cloud providers, so outside of your data infrastructure. So you meet this requirement that one of your copies should be outside of your data center. But in some cases, you can also use this immutable option. For example, in AWS S3 object storage or Wasabi object storage, there are options to lock your backups, to lock objects. So you can lock your backups and make them immutable. So for example, you can, through this option, you can achieve the second requirement. The one copy should be immutable or air-gapped. Basically, if the backup is immutable, you can read it, but you can change it because it's locked for some period of time. We can also support that if you have local repository on the Linux operating system. The file system should be a file system that supports extended attributes. And on such file system, you can also use this immutable option, immutable flag, and the backups should be will be protected against deletion, accidental deletion, and also malicious deletion. SureBackup. SureBackup are functionality that is through it we are able to test your backups. Yeah, so you can schedule testing of your backups, and the test is not only to check some CRC sums or stuff like that. In this test, we basically, what we are doing is starting the virtual machines directly from the backup repository, and we can start those virtual machines and check if the operating system is up, and even if the applications inside those virtual machines are up, and we can do it automatically. So you can schedule this job, SureBackup job, and it can start on the weekend, and during the weekend it can test your backups and check if you will be able to restore if something happens. So yeah, it's a very nice tool. Again, it could be fully automatically test, and at the end you will get on the email you will get a report that the test was done and these virtual machines were working, and with, for example, this one, there was some trouble. You need to look at it. And the last thing I want to talk about is secure restore. In Veeam, we have option to test Windows virtual machines by antivirus before restoring them to production. So basically, we are integrating with antivirus solutions like Windows Defender, antivirus from Symantec, from Asset. By basically, we can support any antivirus that you can start scanning by using command line. In the other options, you just need to create XLS file with basically with the instruction how to use this antivirus. And after that, we can start scanning, start the scans of these virtual disks from the backup. And if there are no infections found, you can continue restore the virtual machine to production. If you can if the antivirus will find some infection, you can basically do two things. You can still restore to production, but disable the network and clean the virtual machine, and after that manually connect to the network. Or you can stop the restore and search for another, maybe all the restore point is clean, is without any malicious software, and you can restore that restore point. So yeah, by this option, you can check the virtual machines again before you will restore them to production. Okay, so that's it. I think you learn a little bit what to do and what not to do during the attack, and how to prepare before the attack. So most important things are just think about it. What you will do, what options do you have, what tools do you have, and if you know how to use them properly to achieve the success in this unfortunate event of ransomware attack. So thank you for your time.